Hi, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. Today we're going to be making this beautiful Christmas card using the Tidings All Around stamp set. And you can find this stamp set in the 2019 holiday catalog, and it's available to purchase anytime before January 2nd of 2019. So you can purchase this stamp set in a bundle, and when you do, you're going to get the stamp set and the dies that come with it. And the dies have this piece that's going to cut the wreath out. And so that is something you're going to definitely want if you get this stamp set. And then it also comes with this other wreath piece and some leaves and branches so that you can add more to your wreath. It's a really great bundle. And if you don't already have it, I definitely think it's one that you're going to want for your holiday cards. So this card has a lot of fun techniques. We're going to be heat embossing the image of the wreath. We're going to be creating our own wood paper in the background, and then also using the buffalo check stamp set in the background. So let's go ahead and get started on the wreath. Okay, so we're going to be heat embossing the wreath, and so I'm going to start with some Whisper White Craft ink. And I like this ink because it's going to stay wet while we put the embossing powder on the image. And before I do this, I just remembered we're going to use a embossing buddy to get the static electricity off our paper. And that way we don't get any extra embossing powder where we don't want it. So ink that up really well and then stick it in the middle of your cardstock. Now you can find the dimensions for the cardstock as well as all the supplies I'm using in the description below. So I know you can't see that, but it's there. And we're going to go ahead and add some white embossing powder. So this is just a little container that I found, and I've just put the Stampin' Up! Embossing powder in the container so that it's a little bigger and easier for me to use. So I'm just going to sprinkle this on and then tap it off. Tap off any extra, and if you get some on your paper that you don't want, just remember we're going to be cutting it out, so it's really okay. So now we're going to go ahead and heat emboss it. So I like to emboss it from the back so that way it doesn't blow off any extra powder that I want on my image. And you're looking for a shine. So right now we have a matte finish, and you know it's done when it is shiny. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to use our sponge daubers, and we're going to color around the wreath. So I'm starting with real red, and I'm getting some ink on my sponge dauber, and I'm going to place some little berries, you could say, around my wreath. So what I'm really doing is just adding color in the places where I think that I would like to have a little bit of red to give the feeling of berries. And you really want it to be nice and dark. All right, so I'm going to go one more time around the areas and just kind of blend in some more red. I'm kind of going around the wreath, so I'm going on the outside and then the inside, and then I'm doing two kind of together, and then outside, inside, two together. So we're done with the red. We're now going to use garden green, and we're going to fill in all the other areas with green. And we're just doing this around the wreath, so we don't need to do any more paper except for what is around the wreath. And we want to make sure that the wreath is showing. So you don't want to leave any spots not colored in. And it's okay if the colors blend. If you've got a little bit of an area where there's green and red, that is fine. Okay, so I think I've got a good wreath here. So now you'll want to take a tissue and we're just going to rub off any color that is on the embossed image, because the stamp with the ink from the sponge dauber is on top, and we want to polish it out so that we get this nice bright white image. There we go. So you can see how bright and white that is, and the beautiful red and green around it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out with the die. Now the die has this little arrow, and so does the stamp. The stamp has this arrow here. Let me see if I can show you that arrow. Do you see it? It's right there. So those line up. So I think I stamped it up in this left corner. So that's where I'm going to start trying to line up my image. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this to the big shot and cut it out. I'll be right back. Okay, so we've cut out our wreath and it looks great. All right, for the next part, we're going to go ahead and create the wood background. And I've got Crumb cake cardstock here, as well as my Birch stamp and some early espresso ink. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up my stamp. And then I'm going to stamp it down. And I'm going to focus on stamping it on this bottom part. Okay, then I'm going to ink it up again. And I want a different part. So I'm switching it, flipping it, I guess, and I'm going to stamp again on the bottom part. But I've flipped it, so you can see that the knot is here and on the left, or on the right, and now it's on the left. So I'm just focusing on a different part of that stamp, trying to get some more grain in my wood. Perfect. Now I'm going to take a sponge and I'm going to pick up some color, and I'm just going to add color, and I'm going to do it in the same direction as my grain because I'm going to add some more depth to this paper. So I'm turning it so that it's on the side of my hand. So just lightly add another level of color. And then you're going to want to add another level by just adding more color to maybe the areas where the knots are. So I'm pressing just a little bit harder, getting a little more ink. Okay. So you can see how we've used some sponging and the stamp in different directions to create some wood grain look on our crumb cake cardstock. So we've finished with that piece. So let's move on to the next step. So I've got my card base here, and this one is a vertical fold, I guess, because it opens from the bottom. It doesn't really matter what type of fold you're using. And we're going to be stamping on the back of the front of our card base with the buffalo check stamp. And we're doing that in the garden green ink. So just ink that up really well. Sometimes these large ones are hard to use. If you have a Stamparatus, then those are awesome for using large stamps. Okay, good pressure. That looks nice. So it looks like we missed the bottom here, but luckily it's pretty even. We're just not going to worry about that because it's a plaid. I don't think many people are going to see that. And so the last thing we need to stamp is the greeting. So I've got my cardstock for the greeting, and I've flagged the ends just by using some scissors. And I've got the greeting, Tidings of Comfort and Joy, and I'm inking that up with garden green. And I'm just going to place that in the middle of my cardstock. And I am now ready to put my card together. So the first thing I'm going to do is add my wood piece to the center of my card base. And just kind of eyeball it. The next piece is a piece of vellum, and it's cut just a little smaller than my card base. So it's 4 inches by 5 1/4. And vellum is interesting because you can see through it when you add adhesive. So I'm just going to put a strip of adhesive in the middle and then 4 small glue dots in the corners. All right, the next thing would be to add our wreath, and we're going to put this with some dimensionals. The mini dimensionals are perfect for this. Okay, and this just goes in the center of our card. And then we're going to add a red strip. It's about a 1/2 inch by 4 inches, and it's also flagged on the ends. And this is just going to go in the center of our greeting. And I'm going to move it a little to the left of the red because I want it to kind of be at the bottom of my wreath. So this just gets attached to the wreath. So I'm going to put some snail on the 2 ends and then probably a couple glue dots, or excuse me, dimensionals here in the center to help support it. And before I add this, I'm also going to add some silver metallic thread. I'm just going to wrap that around 4 of my fingers a couple times, and then you can tear it or cut it. And then this just gets added over those snail areas. Tuck in those ends so they don't pop out. And then go ahead and remove the dimensionals, the backing. And then that just gets placed in the bottom, on the bottom of your wreath. And then the very last thing we're going to add are some accessories. We're going to do these red and green ones. You can find them in the holiday catalog. I love using this pickup tool to add the embellishments. So I'm just going to add a couple of these embellishments to my card. One at the bottom, maybe two up here at the top. There we go. So our card is done. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, like, and share. Visit creativechelsea.com for a free tutorial of this project and to purchase the supplies needed. Have a creative day. Bye.